Aloha everyone, Ronnie Landis here, and welcome to another edition of the official Ronnie Landis podcast show. And as always, I'm your host, Ronnie Landis, and I'm also the founder of the Holistic Health Mastery certification course. This is an online, fully comprehensive, fully engaging, and extremely well detailed certified nutrition course, or a nutrition certification course, I should say. And this is my own creation over the last year and a half, and what an incredible program this has been. So you can find more information on that at holistichealthmastery.com. You can also find more information on me and my work at ronnie-landis.com as well. So let's jump into today's interview. What an incredible show this was with my friend and colleague, TroyCasey. TroyCasey is not only a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of experience, but very specific experience in his life of, being a Versace model, decades ago, and being really into self-purification and nutrition as a way to look better and feel better. Just being in front of the camera, being in that world, in the Hollywood type world, living that lifestyle, and then getting interested in the Amazon rainforest and doing incredible work with the Amazonian tribes like the Shipibo tribes, and helping to preserve the wildlife and homeland of the Amazonian rainforest, and doing that incredible work and having that incredible perspective. And we also discuss a lot about business mastery and entrepreneurialism and how important it is to the health of our mind and body and our state of stress and having financial health. We really dive deep into that aspect, and that's something me and Troy have had many conversations about. And I was so happy that we could bring that whole concept to this episode. This was the first time that I've gone into that terrain with anybody on this radio series. So I was really excited I could have Troy on to really dive into that nugget right there, because I feel like that is something that so many people in the service-based industry are lacking. It's called reciprocal altruism, where you are altruistically giving of yourself, but you're receiving. You're being reciprocal in the value that you give out to others. So this was incredible. I know that you are going to love this episode just as much as I did. So without further ado, I want to introduce Mr. TroyCasey. Enjoy. TroyCasey's message is simple. Healthy me equals healthy planet, illuminating the direct symbiotic relationship of nature and how it interfaces with human biochemistry. Economically motivated as a Versace model in Milan, Italy, 21 years ago, Troy studied internal purification and nutrition as a holistic way of looking and feeling great in front of the camera. Living the successful rock star life, he fell into a bout of alcoholism and drug addiction. Only after finding a deep spiritual connection via meditation and nature, he cured himself holistically by dealing with his inner self-destructive patterns. Continuously studying and practicing what he has discovered, extensively traveling the world, Troy now counsels, lectures, and inspires people all over the planet with choices for a better life on Earth. His specialty is guiding people back to nature through holistic health, self-care, and Amazonian plant medicine. With the help of Maori and other indigenous cultures, he realized the responsibility he has as a human and now has a clear vision of co-creating clean air, water, soil, and peace on the planet. Most recently, he has worked on Discovery Planet's Green Network and his levity-provoking alter ego, the Certified Health Nut, which can be seen on certifiedhealthnut.com. Thank you so much, Troy, for being on the show with me.
Thanks, Ronnie. That intro is kind of legendary. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, well, it sounds legendary when I read it. That's why I had to be extra present for it.
I love it. Yeah, I think I wrote it about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So that's cool. Right
Ye-
on.
Absolutely. There's a lot of little jewels and nuggets in that bio that are part and parcel to the flow of this conversation. But I definitely, for me, and I know a lot of people that are listening to this, the first thing I want to discuss with you is what got you to this place that you're at now. That's always kind of the thing I'm interested in with people. I'm very interested in the human experience, the hero's journey, if you will. And I'm always curious what brought people to where they are. So, what inspired you originally to evolve into your health journey?
Yeah, I think the intro covered a little bit of it. What wasn't in that intro, but is on my website is, I grew up on the street as a kid. Started hitchhiking when I was 12. I was on my own by the time I was 14. I was incarcerated as a youth as well, and then on my 18th birthday, I got out. So and my parents were hippies as well. So I grew up in the Haight-Ashbury in the 60s. So there was always kind of a think different. It was outside of the box mentality, kind of template that I had. And so I went through my whole journey as a model. And actually, before that, I put myself through high school, then I was incarcerated. And there's nothing more powerful and a glimpse at freedom than being incarcerated as a youth, like especially during summer vacation. And I got out. It was during my senior year in high school, and I just got a real taste of freedom, and I really understood, how important that was. And and then, I put myself through college, and then I started modeling, and there was some inner demons, that I didn't deal with. My soul contract, my soul journey, unfolded, and there was a lot of self-destructive behaviors. There was a lot of rebel in me. I've never liked authority, and so I had trouble. I got kicked out of a lot of schools. I never really liked the systems and the people that were in the authority. I fought with them. So when I finally, what happened was people told me, like, look, you're talented, or you're a cool guy, you're wasting your potential. I was drinking a lot in Miami. A lot of my friends were partying at that time, but a few of them had the balls enough to come up to me and say, Troy, it's probably a good time you start taking a deeper look at yourself and what you're doing with your life, because you're worth more than that. And I took that to heart. And then, over quite a few years, I worked on sobering up, and I saw how, attached I was to, partying and, addictive tendencies. I think we all have that component inside of us. And then I just continuously made the commitment to, wake up out of that. And it was meditation that really helped set me free. And when I started meditating, that helped me get deeper into myself. And also, at this time, while I was a model, I got into internal purification, herbs. I became vegan for a couple of years. I cleaned up my diet. I educated myself on the food supply. And so it was a complete process of awakening. I can look back at it now and I can say, it's all been the process of awakening. But I would definitely say when I started to sober up is when I started to become more aware of my relationship to the earth, consciousness itself. And then I started working with indigenous Maori healers, which helped me go much deeper into my own healing process. Stuff that I kept inside me as a child. They really helped me process any kind of traumas that we store in our nervous system. You cross the street when you're 5 years old, and your mother or father screams at you. Your nervous system gets
Mm.
jacked up. You store that information, and if you don't have an outlet to process that information, and depending upon the adults around you and how they behaved, you get that type of nervous system trauma that gets stuck into your body. And so, and this is just part of life. I don't like looking at anything as victim consciousness whatsoever. It's just part of the soul journey, the soul process. And so I was able to unravel some of that. And the Maori also taught me about authenticity. And this is something that I prided myself on as it was growing up on the street. If you're, acting phony, you're going to get your card pulled. Somebody's gonna pull your card, and people don't trust people that are bullshitters. And so I always had that level of authenticity, and the Maori helped me dig deeper. And so from there, I got introduced to Amazon John Easterling and his company, the Amazon Herb Company, and then I went to the Amazon and worked with him and with ayahuasca for about 8 years. I still go down there, but for 8 years solid, I worked with this company. I went down there, did my own research, medicine hunting, experimentation, really research into plant medicine. And that was another awakening. So the big awakenings for me were, being incarcerated as a youth, getting out of that freedom, going into self-destructive patterns, waking up out of that. Meditation really helped me. Working with indigenous cultures, especially the Maoris, helped me. And then ayahuasca was another giant awakening component for me. And from there, I realized, our symbiotic relationship to nature, symbiotic relationship to the earth, and how important it was. And then that's when I started using my talents and the gifts that the Creator gave me to really go out there and share messages. And the 25 years of holistic studies that I now have, just really going out there and sharing with that. Here's an herb, your colon's important. Are you pooping? Here, take this herb. You utilize this, cleanse your digestive tract out, clean out your liver every once in a while. I've been juicing for 25 years. Fresh squeezed juice is loaded with micronutrients that are pre-digested, so there's no taxation on metabolic processes, et cetera. It basically makes you feel great. And so just really getting out there and sharing these messages, because the current situation on this planet right now, we're chopping down the rainforest, we're utilizing oil that's contaminating the air, the water, and the soil. Geopolitics is based upon extracting these natural resources, which is not good for our brothers and sisters, in the Amazon, indigenous cultures all around the world, Africa, and especially what's happening in the Middle East with Syria, Libya, Iraq, and Afghanistan, for oil. And so it's a huge time of awakening. And I realized that you can't really get out the violins and start whining and crying about the rainforest or anything else, because people are too stressed out and busy trying to, drive in traffic and pay for, high rents and all this predatory capitalism that we're living in. And I say that because I speak to older people all the time, and they're like, when I graduated high school in the 30s, I got a job with $18,000 a year as a machinist at a factory, and I bought a car, a house, a boat, a refrigerator, and I had 3 weeks off of vacation, and it was all paid off. And now it's just like, you got to have, if you live in LA like me, you've got to have $3,000 to $5,000 just for a 2-bedroom house for a small family to live in. And so so it's up to me to really rectify the systems, shift the systems, transform, upgrade, make the systems more efficient for us and more sustainable. If I don't do it, who else is going to do it? We all got suckered into voting for Barack Obama, get the black man in power. They're about to do the woman now with Hillary Clinton, but this is all geopolitics, banking, politics, at its best. These people are puppets. They're not going to change anything. So my message, is get yourself healthy, vote with your dollars on your own bloodstream. And if we all just started there, we can really transform this planet quite quickly. And so that's basically the history of Certified Health Nut and where I'm at and where I came from.
Beautiful story, incredible story, and there's so many directions that we can go. We're definitely gonna traverse into a few of the things that you had brought up in that one of the things I want to jump into with you right away is your incredible passion for the Amazon rainforest, for the Amazon plant medicine. You know, it's funny, as an herbalist and nutritionist myself, I kind of look at some of the herbal and plant systems, the plant medicine systems in the world, like Chinese medicine or herbology, Vedic herbology, Amazonian herbalism. And, you know, right away I'm thinking of some of my favorite herbs in the world, you know, like Chuchu Huasi and Chanca Piedra and Una d'Agato or cat's claw, Paudiarco, obviously Banisteriopsis copy, which I would love for you to touch on, the ayahuasca plant, and how that shaped your life, because I definitely have an amazing few experiences with that. But just the Amazonian perspective, at least your experience with it, and anything that you would like to share about that, I'd love to hear from you.
Yes. So, I fell in love with those plants immediately. There was a company called the Amazon Herb Company, and I was doing a lot of ceremonies in Southern California, and I met some very interesting people. And we did a couple ceremonies out at the Integratron, and there was some Amazon Herb Company distributors there. They were from Mount Shasta, and I didn't really know what they were, and people said, "Oh, they're powerful." And so I started, taking them here and there, and I was up camping actually in Mount Shasta soon after the Integratron event, and these people had a lot of the herbs, and they were making tinctures for us to taste, and I noticed how alive I felt. So I ordered my first set of herbs from them, and I took them, and it was an incredible package. We had a product called Illumination, which had 40 of the top shamanic herbs from the Amazon. And then we had another product called Sumakazan, which was amazing for the endocrine system. It built muscle without even working out. It was Suma, Maca, Mui Puama, really powerful stuff. And then we also had the Treasure Tea, which had all the herbs that you just mentioned, the Chanca Piedra, Chuchuwasi, Unyagato, very powerful herbs. They stimulate macrophage phagocytosis, which is good for the immune system. They help the blood. They get excess calculi formations out of the body, which is kidney stones and gallstones. Mm-hmm. I mean, the list goes on. The Amazonian pharmacology is so powerful. At the same time, I started going to their national conventions, and Dr. James Duke, who was the leading ethnobotanist at the time, he was always there, and just the lectures that he would give on the profound nature of these plants was amazing. So I fell in love with this company, and then I won a trip to the Amazon with Amazon John, and I went down there. We have a facility in Pucallpa, Peru. I met the Shipipo that were harvesting the herbs for us. We went upriver for a whole day to a village called Porvenir Village. We met the people there. We had a camu plantation with 28,000 camu trees down there. So, just being in the Amazon, the energy, the vibration of the Amazon rainforest, changed my life forever. And so, so for the next 8 years with that company, I would go back and forth to the Amazon. One of my friends that I met down there, he was a gringo shaman. He had a shamanic healing center. He had a huge botanical pharmacy. I did a lot of interviews with the Indians down there about the herbs. And, it's just the most profound herbs, the most profound phytochemistry. And it makes sense. These harsh environments, both desert plants and jungle plants, usually have the most complex phytochemistry and the most sought after phytochemicals to fight cancer and all sorts of diseases. 40% of all drugs on the market and 25% of all cancer drugs get their impetus from rainforest plants. And so the cure for AIDS and cancer was clearly in the Amazon. So I was enamored with that. I was enamored with the energy. I was enamored with the Shipipo people. I was amazed at how these plants made me feel, the power of the antioxidants. Then we had a holistic formulator formulate all natural skincare line in glass bottles for us, which was just amazing. I used that skincare line for 8 years. I'm bummed that it's no longer available, but it was just an incredible line of products and herbs. And I feel that taking those herbs on a regular and constant basis, the biophotonic light, the energy of millions, if not billions of years of ecological development. You've got virgin soil with all the trace minerals from the rainforest floor. You've got things that really aren't available, things like germanium, manganese, trace minerals that aren't really available in much of today's food supply. So I was putting this type of nutrition into my body daily. Amazon John was using the spagyric process, alcohol extraction, and then he would put the bones of the plants. Basically, they would take 100,000-pound press the plants down, burn off the plant cellulose, and what was left was the minerals or the ash from the minerals from the rainforest floor. And so we use these spagyric process herbs, and you could just feel the power of these plants. And I mainline that stuff. I took those plants daily, for many years. Some of them I even burned out. I took them too much, and so I would cycle off them for long periods of time, especially the maca products and the Rainforest Treasure Tea we had, which had cat's claw, it had paw d'arco, it had chuchuasi, jataba, chancapiedra. I drank so much of that. I've rotated off of it for years, and my body still doesn't want it. Mm. But I feel that it also has given my body a shield, an immune shield. When I started getting into cold water therapy and cold shower therapy, it felt like, because you can feel everything when you take freezing cold showers. Mm-hmm. It felt like the rainforest was just in my ligaments and cells, and just like it made my body so resilient and strong. And so, you can go back on my YouTube channel, 2007, 2008, 2009. I had a lot of content from the Amazon rainforest. All my experience with ayahuasca, I document it quite clearly. I recently, about I think 2013 or 2014, I made a 25-minute synopsis on my whole journey with ayahuasca and working in the Amazon. And people write me from all over the world and, either need advice or want to go down there. And so I'm grateful for social media and the YouTube, because it allowed me to get this information out and really bring the Amazon rainforest, home to people. And so the experience of putting those plants into my body was extremely powerful. It still is. I reached the top of that company. The company was mismanaged, and we fought for change. We brought on consultants, and we ended up selling the company to another company, and they do business differently. And so it's still in limbo what's going on. I think Amazon John wishes he didn't sell the company. And so, stuff happens in business. I learned a lot in business. I went from zero business, getting involved with Amazon Herb Company, which was a network marketing, multi-level marketing company. And I learned so much in business in 8 years, getting the word out, becoming successful. We had been called the solution to saving the rainforest by the Cousteau Society in their 2006 documentary, Return to the Amazon. So it was a pretty big deal, the whole project that we were doing. The Shipipo were harvesting the herbs and the medicines for us. We were helping them with land titles and attorneys to fight lumber companies that were trying to poach their land. We were able to forge alliances with multiple tribes, buy them two-way ham radios so they can communicate with each other, so that the oil companies wouldn't go down there and go, hey, your buddies are taking $5,000 for, so we could look on their land. Why don't you? And then they would get on the phone with the two-way radios, and they're like, we didn't take any money. They're full of shit. And so they would be able to communicate and fend themselves off, because the oil exploration is the cancer of the rainforest. That's what cuts the roads through these very dense jungle areas. They come down with bulldozers and barges and really heavy equipment, and they just start mowing the rainforest down. Once the oil is there or isn't there, the roads are cut, and then inhabitants will come down there with a chainsaw that lumber companies give to these people. They'll give them $1 a day and a chainsaw to go fell whatever large trees they can. And this is the global economy that we're living in. So these people will go down there and extract trees out of the rainforest. Once that's kind of done, then they burn the bush and they grow coca or whatever other cash crop they can. But if you know anything about the Amazon, once you start clear cutting in the jungle, that's millions of years of ecological development. You can't just plant a tree and it grows back. Within a couple of years, patches of that turn into desert. It gets all dried out because you got equatorial sun. And the big trees, the canopy is cut down. So this is the big problem down there is, these roads that get cut for oil exploration. So I always asked people, look at your own oil use, look at your own consumption as a modern day human being, because we're all inextricably connected. We're all in symbiotic relationship. We are the problem, so we are also the solution. So start thinking in that vein and call forth the new reality, the free energy, the permaculture, the self-care, self-education revolution. I like to keep things in solution-oriented concepts, because we are not victims. We are victors. We're powerful human beings. And the Amazon herbs were definitely a light bulb for me. They were a light switch for me. They were a Kundalini rising for me. And you couple that with the ayahuasca, and boy, I was on the moon. And look at my videos from the Amazon. I'm a very excited person, especially when it comes to the rainforest.
Mm-hmm. So powerful. It's such a topic that's so near and dear to my heart too, especially as I've brought myself closer and closer to nature and living here in Kauai, and seeing all the magic that's happening here and being able to witness nature's rhythms and get just a direct connection with the communication of nature. It's really deepened my heart in so many ways and brought out the reality that surrounds us, that we do have to empower ourselves. We have to make renewed choices based on renewable resources and really get in connection, get in alignment with what nature has been doing from the very beginning. And so I really appreciate you explaining that, sharing that for me and all the listeners. And I feel the direction I'd like to take it now is definitely a direction that you and me have spoke about many times in the past. I think it's funny just because of my memories of it. When we first connected in Sedona at Joshua Pelliser's house up there in the canyon, and meeting up with Giovanni and that whole little crew, and we started talking a lot about, we had been aware of each other through Facebook, but you know how it is when you see the online personalities, but then when you actually meet someone and spend time with them, you really get to know who that person is underneath the profile. And we had a really great synergy. And one of the things that kept coming up in our conversations was the whole idea of building wealth and aligning that with our mission, aligning that with our purpose for spreading our message for empowerment via health and lifestyle, and helping other people do the same thing. And that has been a powerful thing for me ever since that time period last year all the way up to now. That has been a really important part of my life, is the financial health, because I've just seen how that supports everything else. And so from your perspective, I'd love to hear, how important is building financial health in relation to our bodily and mental health?
Well, that's a great question, Ronnie. It's very important at this point in stage of human history. That is our hunting and gathering right now, and so is playing success games in the economy and or work. If you choose that direction, I personally can't work for anyone else.
So you're unemployable.
I'm completely unemployed.
Yeah.
And so, I've never had a real job for any extended periods of time. And so, success and business, I believe, is hand in hand for transforming this world. And you want people that are conscious and understand the bigger picture and good stewards of the earth, and an authentic brother or sister, for other brothers and sisters on the planet. Because if you're not strong, if you're not resilient, it's not beneficial if one of the Rainbow Warriors is got to live in his car and he's got dental problems that he can't take care of, or he can't feed himself, or maybe it's a mother or a single mother that can't feed their children organic food when they're aware of that. And so it's very important that we become successful in what we're doing and apply ourselves in some form of business that's going to take us to the next level, and preferably align ourselves with our values, because then it won't be so stressful. And I'm connected to a lot of people on the internet, and people write me from the military, and they write me from, they work as a drug rep or whatever, and they are aware and they are making it a stepping stone for themselves. And so, we can't all do it at 100% right now, just because of the way the systems are. The corporations, are set up. The job market, is set up that somehow you got to feed into the system. So for me to be outside of the systems, I have to eat organic food. With my awareness and my sensitivity, I don't feel well, and I'm not a nice person when I don't feel well. So I have to have organic food. I have to have high quality water. I cannot work myself into the ground. It's impossible for me to drive in traffic and keep my sanity. So, I have to live on the beach. I have to be on my bicycle. I have to be able to move my body every day. It's antithetical for me to send my children to public school. I've seen what public school does. I've educated myself, understanding what John Taylor Gatto teaches in Weapons of Mass Instruction. I understand the systems. I'm educated in Steiner education, in Waldorf education, in the Waldorf curriculum. I understand the potential and the possibilities with that. And so, for me, I have to be successful. It's a mandatory dictate for myself. And so, for me to be strong and resilient, and then, the systems. I like John Perkins' book the best, because it really talks about shapeshifting, like the way the shamans do to heal their patients in the rainforest. They shapeshift into an animal spirit, or into a plant, or to get a vision, or to use some form of energetic healing on their patient or their client. And so what he talks about is shapeshifting the conduits of commerce and media. So you've got commerce and media right now. We're running, fossil fuels, nuclear waste, weapons, pesticides, herbicides down the conduits of commerce. And on the other side of media, we're promoting inane, stupidity and just sex and unconscious sporting activities. And not that entertainment doesn't have value. I'm not saying that. It's just the level of inane base consciousness. The consciousness is not elevating the population. It's keeping it dumbed down and base. And so and you look at the news, and the news is just propagating more of the same. It's based on fear. It's based on driving support for the geopolitics situation, which is basically about natural resources now in the Middle East, which is so important. This is why all the confusion around ISIS and Muslim extremists and all this stuff. But if you look fairly deep, you scratch the surface, you realize that it's CIA instigated. We've got our own hand in the pile, and it makes sense. We're looking to feed the conduits of commerce, which is fed by oil right now. Oil drives the world economy. So it's understandable. It's not, I don't know if you can really look at it being diabolically bad or, bad or good. It's too black and white. The situation is, it's business as normal. However, that business isn't sustainable for us once you start to view it at the highest level. And then you also look that it's all attached to money. So the best thing that we can do is become successful within inside the systems while upholding our own values to the best of our ability, and then eventually shift the systems. Crash the systems is kind of an aggressive terminology. I'm not looking for a revolution. I think we fought all the revolutions in the world. They've been fought. It's time for an evolution. You know, it's next level. It's upgrading. Look what Airbnb and Uber has done to, you know, taxis and hotels. You know, it's just time to upgrade the systems. It's time to evolve the systems. It's time to make them efficient. And you look at someone like Elon Musk, he's already doing this, and he's doing it sideways. He's building the infrastructure of electric cars so that when some form of free energy or sustainable energy comes, we'll have the infrastructure to support it. And I don't think that guy's much of a dummy. He named his car company Tesla. You know, obviously
Yes.
he knows who Nikola Tesla was. So, you know, I have my faith on this level of innovation, this level of intelligence. And look, entrepreneurs have always worked to bring transformation and upgrade the systems. You know, entrepreneurs are outside the box. Richard Branson, you know, he didn't go to your major university for his education. He thought outside the box. My kids go to Waldorf, and we were just at a meeting the other night, and this parent spoke up and said that their daughter is expressing real interest in engineering, and they wanted to send her to this very powerful engineering camp for the summer. But the process was so extensive, and you know, Waldorf is outside of the system. You don't even learn to read until you're about, you know, 9, 10, 11, and it's usually by osmosis. They automatically pick it up. And so it's the way the brain develops. And so what they were saying was the application process for this young girl that wanted to go to engineering camp, it was really about what awards she had won. And what that told me was, how well is she playing inside the system? If you're an engineer and you start talking about free energy in a university, you will be kicked out. You will get an F. They will discredit you. Same thing with medicine. If you start talking about plant medicine and integrative medicine and alternative therapies, they will kick you out.
They'll ban your TED Talk.
I mean, what's that?
They'll ban your TED Talk.
Right. There you go. So the bottom line is these things are, you know, outside of the system. So, you know, my thing is you've got to be an entrepreneur to be outside the system. Look at my buddy Paul Chek. You know, he sells $2 million minimum of his products every year. You know, he's one of the top holistic guys on the face of the earth, and his Chek Institute is a huge legacy. And Paul's success is, you know, instrumental for moving forward. The last person you want to see broke is someone like Paul Chek.
Right.
And so, and sure enough, you know, running an institute like that, you know, it costs a lot of money and infrastructure. And so, you know, I help Paul out with PR and social media and ask for nothing, because his messages are aligned with my values, and his systems are systematic and professional. So I can guide someone that wants a professional education or that wants upgraded information, you know, straight to the Chek Institute. And so I think success goes hand in hand with, you know, upgrading the systems, with evolving the systems, with shape-shifting the systems. And lo and behold, we no longer have to wait or beg the networks to put our television show on. We put out a good enough product, and we put it out consistently enough. You know, you can become Elliott Hulse. He's got almost 2 million subscribers on YouTube right now. He's got a whole marketing team that moved in behind him. You know, you talked to him 4 years ago, he was broke living in his parents' basement. And so, you know, he applied himself as an entrepreneur. He kicked butt, and he's getting out there teaching 16 or 14 to 36-year-olds the strongest version of yourself. You know, and he's got a whole bunch of holistic studies behind him from Paul Chek as well. And so, you know, being successful is at the cornerstone of, you know, transforming this world. When you're successful, you can afford organic food, you can travel around the world, and you can teach others. So success in business at this point goes hand in hand. Also, success in business allows you, especially if you're an entrepreneur, allows you to give your gifts. Talking about Giovanni and his crew, he always taught those great principles about giving your gifts, the gift economy, and which is another Michael Tellinger point of view, which is the Ubuntu movement, the Zulu word for contributionism, which is where I believe that we're headed. And everyone has unique gifts. Not everybody is a good orator, or not everybody's an herbalist, and not everybody's likes to sew or knit or play in the gardens or teach fitness. Everyone is so different. My wife's an amazing artist and a designer, and so at the heart of it, do what you love to do, at least recreational, until it starts paying you some money. Figure out what your values are, at the cornerstone. What is it that you value? I value freedom, movement, high quality food, high quality water, nature, preserving nature, helping other people understand our connection to nature. So, of course, my business is aligned with that. Everything I live and do and breathe is all about healthy soil, healthy food, healthy blood, healthy human bodies, conscious thought, using the intelligence of the human mind, artistic expression of that as well. And so, these are my views on business, on commerce. Do what you love, align, find out what your values are, figure out what your dream is. If you don't know what your dream is, figure out your nightmare and reverse engineer your life from that point of view. And if you're in a crappy job that you hate, cool, acknowledge that and utilize it as a stepping stone. And if you want more information on those principles, read The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles
Yes.
in 1910. And so, as an expression, as an organism, we need more life for expression, for evolution. And right now, more life is equated to having more money in your pocket. And so, for spiritual expansion, it's important that you have money in your pocket until, I'm successful at doing away with the whole money system. So, does that kind of address it there, Ronnie?
Yeah, absolutely. In depthly in many different ways, and I completely agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I've come to that same revision of a conclusion about the whole money game. It's a game, right? And we make up all these stories about it, and we have these negative or positive connotations associated with it, which either empower us or enable us in our quote-unquote story about money and about its necessity, or about how worthy we really are of obtaining it, of having it in complete abundance. And I just really love how you laid that out. One of the things that comes to me is this term of reciprocal altruism, which is so many people in our community and related communities of service are far too service orientated, meaning that they are giving of themselves. They will give their entire life force. They will let their clients squeeze out all the juice inside of them. They'll bend over backwards for other people, but when it comes to receiving or asking for what they actually want, what their actual value is, they're apprehensive, they're hesitant, they have self-worthiness issues in that sense. They don't feel that they are worthy to ask for what they actually need. Therefore, they struggle their way through their life. And so I've seen that be a very unnecessary thing. And I was there for a long time, and I'm still in a process of increasing the value I give and also increasing the value that I request of other people that choose to work with me in any kind of dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a weird conundrum, and I think it goes hand in hand with the way, the systems are set up. Again, no victim, but just recognizing, where it's at. And money, it has been a system for us to move around the world and store grain and harvest materials and et cetera, et cetera. again, I don't like to look at things so polarized
Mm-hmm.
as just absolute bad or good. It's just, it's gotten us to the certain situation we're at right now, and there's no reason why we can't upgrade beyond that. And the perfect example that I like is the Ubuntu movement or contributionism, where people give their gifts and we build sustainable communities, off the grid communities. We do away with fossil fuels. Uh, and then we create systems that are supportive for life on Earth. So having permaculture and readily available local food, energy sources and technology that support the human being, which is currently we're utilizing EMFs and EMR, electromagnetic frequency and radiation, and cell phone towers. These things are not optimal. These things are not optimized. Plus, if you look at the way the human brain can use, the computers are prosthetics compared to the human brain. So, this is what it always brings me back to, upgrading and optimizing. And in the meantime, we're still working inside this money system. So it's a little bit of a conundrum. So, my advice is, if you've got a Instagram following, a Facebook following, get out there and monetize yourself with somebody's products. If you don't know how to do that, contact me. I've got a great system that I work with. If I didn't monetize Certified Health Nut, if I didn't have something to monetize, then I'd have to go build it up from the ground, and I'd have to manage all that. Now, Ronnie, you've done that, and I know other people. My buddy Elliott Hulse has done that. Obviously, Paul Chek's done that at a very big level. I believe that's the next level for me. I also believe that market's pretty saturated as well, and so
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be just marketing more rehashed drivel. So right now I'm working with David Sandoval and his wheatgrass company, and that's going very successful for me. It's low maintenance. I just plug in my network to a monetization platform, and it helps pay the bills for me. And so, as an entrepreneur, there's a lot of legwork on that. Sometimes it is just easier to just go out and get a job. But I recommend anybody who's out there, looking for a better paying job, I would get into sales. At the end of the day, sales and marketing is at the cornerstone of everything. So learn how to get into sales and learn how to sell big ticket items,
Mm-hmm.
because you're always going to earn commissions. And you know what? Sales is a perfect position for misfits, people that got, lower than average grades, people that have no education, because if you can talk and communicate the message to people, you can facilitate their decision making, and that's what sales is. And everything has a sales component in the world that we live in today. You buy a brand new pair of sneakers or you eat at a good restaurant, you're out there telling people. And so find something that you can market and do sales around, because that's the quickest way to make bigger money than $10 an hour, which nobody can really live on. $10, $15 an hour, which a lot of these menial jobs, pay. So, my advice is get into sales, then get clear on what your values are. Contact me if you want to work with me, and just look at your other options. Look at other options. Read The Science of Getting Rich and wrap your head around this level of success. We need we need the hippie rainbow warriors out there making tons of money. You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
it happened in the
It,
'60s. Actually, if you look at history, the hippies moved to Marin County and became the yuppies.
wow. That's what Marin County is now. In
That's correct.
Berkeley is kind of the flip.
And that's where my parents and their friends all moved to.
Wow. That's funny. Man, there was something brilliant that was popping up in my head as you were speaking. It was, The Science of Getting Rich. I actually read The Science of Getting Rich so many times, and also The Science of Becoming Great, which is one of Wallace D. Wattles' lesser known books, but equally as powerful, right? And I mean, I just want to put that out there for anyone out there. Like, if I were to recommend 3 books of that era, The Science of Becoming Rich was kind of the first one, and then after that was James Allen's As a Man Thinketh, and then Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I imagine in the kind of the personal development and network marketing world that you have been in for so long, you probably have been exposed to all those. And those three books revolutionized my psyche. So I just think it was so cool that you brought that up, because very rarely do people actually mention that to me.
Yeah, and the thing I'd like to say about that whole concept is, you know, it's going to be a process, guys. If you start going down this road, if you look at yourself and you look and you say, yeah, I want better food for myself all the time. I want to live in a nice house. I want to take care of myself at the highest level. Yes, I want to travel to foreign lands for spiritual pilgrimages. It's a process. You get your hands on Think and Grow Rich, The Science of Getting Rich, these books that Ronnie just mentioned. It's going to become a process to program your subconscious mind. And remember, we're taught in school, in industrial age schooling for 12 years, to sit down, be quiet, and regurgitate the force-fed information to go out and get a real job, to get a good job. And if you're good in school doing that, you get to become a doctor or a lawyer. One does white-collar crime, right? It makes white-collar crime legal. That's an attorney. And then you've got doctors, which are basically drug pushers. And, I'm generalizing, but basically that's what those businesses and those professions really are. Not that there's not some good attorneys out there that are whistleblowers and stuff, and there's a lot of doctors that get into it that are well-meaning. However, things are a little misguided right now. And so just remember that that's the programming that we get. It's the programming we get from the media. It's the programming we get from school, which is basically just mind your business and you'll get a good job. And then, look at the history of schooling. You've got the bells that go off, and it's the same thing. You get a lunch break. You have to be at work at a certain time. So we're programmed for this. So it's going to take a little bit of time to break the mold and break out of it. But if you start reading those books and making those intentions and being clear about your dream or the reverse of your nightmare, then you can start walking towards. It takes time. The success coaches that I study with, Brad Sugars says it takes 10 years to become an overnight millionaire.
Absolutely.
Or I think Oprah says it takes 7 years to
Be like an
get on
overnight
her show.
success.
People think,
Yeah.
oh, you're on Oprah, you're an overnight success. Reverend Michael Beckwith started Agape, and I think about 20 years later he was on Oprah.
Right. And now everyone knows about him, and because of the film The Secret. And I thought 12 years ago when I watched that movie or whatever it was, I saw Michael Beckwith and I was like, oh my God, that dude is the best ever. That guy is amazing. And then it became on my radar, but I had no idea that 20 or 30 years before that, like 20 years before that, he started Agape and he had been doing his thing all that time, right? So that's a great example.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a process. I'm in that process right now. I've got a family. I've had some real gnarly ups and downs in the last couple of years that really kicked my ass. And you know what? I'm grateful for it. In fact, I put a post up today. One of my team members in from Ireland, he talked about failure and success is synonymous. You got to go out there and test the boundaries and see where you're at, see what your success ratio is. A lot of people work with me and, they think it's going to be easy or this, that, or the other thing, or even, the opposite of that. I get around some of these alpha males, in the sports fitness world, and they think they're so successful and they think they're so great, and they come out of the gate and it's like, okay, well, what's your closing ratio? How good is your communication to get out there and talk to people about what you value, and getting them into your sales funnel? And so if your closing ratio is not high, you do have to go out there and fall on your face. You have to learn how to navigate the terrain, what to say, what not to say, how to say it, how to present, your knowledge base, et cetera, et cetera. And that's part of the problem I have with a lot of these health gurus on the internet. Is a lot of people are just regurgitating rehashed stuff, but they're not embodying it themselves. And
Yes.
and I've also been reviewing what I put out there, Ronnie, because I don't want to be that guy. And so my whole thing is I base most of my stuff on intuition, and then I test the snot out of it in my own body. You know, if I'm going to test an herb, I'm gonna megadose it, and I'm going to do it for 2-3 months, a year, see how it works in my own body, rotate off of it, try something else. You know, and it's through that trial and error process that I become successful. But you'll never know unless you're consistent, unless you put it into practice, not just roll the idea around in your head. That's
Yeah,
it's a different concept altogether.
this is a brilliant directive, actually, and we don't have tons of time, but I would love to make time to complete this final direction here. You brought up some key things: communication. How is your communication? When I think of the health community, I have had to go through a number of personal revisions. I've had to revise my deductions, my conclusions. I really like that phrase, by the way, revising your conclusions about the nature of reality and what you think is concrete. And in that process, you know, you spoke to this very, very eloquently, is that you didn't want to be one of those guys that was record and repeat and just regurgitating information. And for a number of years in the beginning of my journey as an orator and putting myself out there, I was very hesitant because I too did not want to be that person, and I knew that there was so much more authenticity. But in order to get to the real core of my message that I wanted to put out in the world, I had to go through this delayering process. I had to break through all this stuff, and quite honestly, I had to educate myself. I had to read books. I had to understand other people's perspectives in the field in order to get to what my true perspective was. I had to have enough reference points in order to find out like what I believe the truth was. So anyways, what I'm getting at is that I would love to hear from you. What is your observation in our health community as it stands? We were talking earlier before we got onto this call about the ways people kind of exacerbate, or they become overly one size fits all. They get on a new thing and then they aggressively put out their message in a way that is exclusive instead of inclusive. And you notice with people, their communication is no longer harmonious. A lot of times it becomes aggressive. So I would love for you just to share some of your observations being in this field for so long.
Yeah, so I'll go sideways on this for a second, and then if I lose it, just bring me back. But Don Tolman, the Tolmans, Tyler Tolman and Don Tolman, I learned from them a while back. Took a workshop from them, and Don Tolman's a wealth of information. But they like to go to the etymology of words, and he brought in the idea of praxis, gnosis, intellicus, or gnosis, praxis, intellicus, which is to know, to do, and to become, which is an ever-evolving phi ratio spiral of evolution, basically. So gnosis, praxis, intellicus. So basically to know, to practice, and to put it into your, intellectual, or, have it attain wisdom. So gnosis, praxis, intellicus. To know, to do, to become, an ever-evolving spiral of evolution. So, that's what's happening. Number one, and we have to understand that, as opposed to, oh, I've arrived. I found Christianity and I've arrived. I found meditation and now I'm enlightened, and you know what? I'm going to beat you over the head with it until you get enlightened too.
Right.
So, another great element of this is Daniel Vitalis, The Myth of the Omega Man. Now, that is such a great video. It was probably put out in 2006 or 2007, one of the early YouTube videos. And, I really like Daniel because he went through that whole process. And I like his relationship with David Wolf as well, because David, is such a huge proponent of the raw food diet. And here's one of his buddies that it didn't work out very well. And of course, he's putting him on the stage. And so I thought that was great. And Daniel brings a lot of intelligence, to that. It's like you get into this, and that's usually someone's first exploration into health. Oh, standard American diet sucks. Oh, plant-based diet's very cleansing, and then you get the whole exposure into fruits and vegetables, and a more holistic aspect of nutrition. And so that is a great video to really talk about the entry points. I think David Sandoval, my current business partner, also went through this. He got into veganism and raw food veganism, vegetarianism, macrobiotic, raw food, veganism. Then he got into breatharianism, and I think he went down to like 140 pounds or something like that. Anyhow, we go through these progressions, these understandings, these learnings, and the idea is to understand that life is fluid, life is a dance, and so to keep fluid as opposed to keeping stuck. When I was studying Vipassana meditation with S.N. Goenka, they're very, they want to keep the purity of the practice. And one of my friends, he got brought in by the teacher, and he got a little lecture about, because he was teaching a form of meditation to his students, and they were like, we want to keep it pure and blah, 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 blah. And that's totally understandable, but he brought up a good point, and he said, part of purity is stagnation, and a stagnant body of water becomes a cesspool. And so we've got to, life flows. So the idea is to stay fluid, to stay open to concepts, to be able to question your reality, your beliefs, especially your beliefs, the dogma. And so, and I'm constantly looking at it as well. I'm making a stink to crash the systems and raise consciousness. And it's like, I've got a great lifestyle in Santa Monica, California. It's like, Troy, why are you rocking the boat? And so what I always fall back on is nature and intuition. This is my basic concept of God, the natural world, the ebb and flow of life. Being attached to any kind of principles, that can also make me stagnant and rigid. And, eventually my, spacesuit over here is going to expire. And my spirit is going to carry on, or whatever philosophical principle you want to look at. And so, at the highest level, I've got to be able to let go of everything. Bring back Giovanni again. He's taught me some really great principles. Just about my wife and my kids. You think about it. They're not yours. You can't take them with you. You could get hit by a car tomorrow, and so could they. And so, it's best if you are able to let go and let these ideas go instead of letting them trap you into a certain area. Stay fluid. I like to align myself with natural law, natural principles. Certain fundamental principles about taking care of the human body are, they're immutable. So you've got, hydration, nutrition, movement. Everybody's got to move their body. You've got to get proper sleep. You want to have good thought input. If you've got too much stress, that'll override the body and shut the body down, create a disease. And the same thing with breathing. You have to have optimal, breathing. These are foundation principles that you really can't argue with. And so when you look at those, then you can stay fluid with, other ideas. If you get too much sleep or too less, increase or balance out, how you see fit in this yin yang world. So, staying in those boundaries of, the yin, the yang, the balance, aligning yourself with nature. And at the end of the day, I don't care how many, rainforest reams of scientific data you have. If it doesn't resonate in your soul, in your gut, in your enteric nervous system, if it doesn't feel good in your body, then it's probably not optimal for you right at that moment. I think you could also use intuition as the voice of God inside of you. So if we can stay aligned with those, we don't need external, outside, information. If people get too rigid in their system and in their ideas, that can create stress. And stress can override any, optimal eating plan. So we want to keep fluid in our ideas. Does that make sense, Ronnie?
Man, it makes the most sense ever, Troy. Thank you so much. You are one inspirational character, the certified health nut. Your reputation definitely precedes you in that sense. And getting to know you over, I definitely feel like over the last year on a much more personal level, but just in general, has been a pleasure and honor, and I totally support your mission, your message, and everything you're doing. It's an honor to share that stage of life with you, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Ronnie. And same goes to you. You've got a great trajectory in health and healing and business. I'm watching you on the sidelines and I'm rooting for you. And anytime I can help you, I got great content on Certified Health Nut Facebook page. Anytime you need a blast out for the work that you're doing, just holler at me. And you're aligned with my values, and I'm happy to send your stuff out there to my crew.
Right on, brother. I appreciate that. So where can everybody find out about you and your work?
So I recommend hitting the website workingwithtroy.com just to see what I'm looking for as far as business partners and who I want to work with, and maybe if it's a viable option for you. Otherwise, Certified Health Nut is a global brand. You can find me on YouTube. I've got a couple hundred videos there and on my social media outlets. But workingwithtroy.com, and then find me on Facebook. And love to meet you guys and just holler at me anytime, man. I'm an open book.
Beautiful. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the official Ronnie Landis podcast show with our incredible guest, TroyCasey. Check out his links. Check out him and his all the information he's putting out there. Really amazing stuff. So until next time, guys, I'm wishing you all the success, all the empowerment possible, and much aloha.